What's up, YouTube? Today I am working on a project to convert something that I built into something else. The problem with building a shop is that once the shop is built, you fill it with all these things, but you don't necessarily know what your needs are when you're filling it. And so over time, over the past year or two, my needs have changed, and I've definitely found some things that I wish I had that I didn't put in the beginning. And so one of the things that I built when I the very first wood project that I worked on was I built those two workbenches. They are 4 foot long exactly and 2 foot wide exactly. They are 4x8 sheet of plywood, split 4 ways. So there's a bottom shelf and a top shelf and a bottom shelf and a top shelf. And they are literally mirror images of each other. And that was a great idea. I really like having the workbench area over there. But two problems. The first is it has become this place where I just stack stuff. Because it's out of the way, it's up against the wall, and so that's part of the issue. But the other issue is that I have this big giant open space here in the middle, and this is where I normally want to do works when I want to work on a project. I want to come in and do it here. And so I have thought about building a tabletop where I could come in and do those things, like a bar top, almost an island. But I still have those things. And then I would have something here and something there, and then I'm walking around things all the time. And so I came up with this idea. I don't know if it's gonna work. Today we're gonna find out if it's gonna work. But what I wanna do is to take those two workbenches that I built. And I bought some things off of Amazon. I bought some caster wheels. In this box, you can't see them, but I have some heavy-duty caster wheels. I have these gate hinges, and then I have some deadbolt sliding lock mechanisms. And so what I plan to do today, if this works, is to take those two, bring them together, put casters on all 8 legs, put hinges on one side and deadbolt things on the other, and so they will be able to push up against that wall and be a wall-based workbench. But when I need something out here, I'll be able to wheel them out here, fold the whole thing in half like a transformer, and use the deadbolts to hold it, and so it will become a 4x4 island. Now, I will tell you right now, the biggest problem I see with this is that they're not really tall enough. They're a good height for putting a miter saw on or for stacking things on, but I don't know if the height is right to become this center island piece. It's gonna have to do for now, and I may add height to it at a later date. But that's today's project, so let's get started.
Well, the first step of the project was to empty off the workbench. So I'm currently emptying off the workbench. Probably should have done that before I hit record, but how exciting is this footage to watch me carry things back and forth? All this stuff is going to have to find a place later. It's all being stacked just off camera so that you can't see where it's going, but it's all not in a permanent home. So with everything off the first table, I am now flipping the table over. You can see how sturdy these things are. They were they're made mostly out of 2x4s. The top railing is 4 foot by 2 foot. Then there's another railing that's 4 foot by 2 foot with 2x4s for legs and plywood for the platforms. Here I am opening the first of a couple of boxes from Amazon, and these are the 4 casters that I ordered to attach to the bottom. Now, I only ordered 4 because last year I ordered another 4 casters for a different project that I never did, so I already had 4 casters. These casters are $30 for 4 on Amazon. I will add a link. I don't have an affiliate link. I'm not making any money off of this. I wish I were. If you can make money off of building things like this, boy, what a world that would be, huh? So anyway, I already had 4 of these casters, so I ordered another 4, which makes the caster investment about $65 and the most expensive part of this entire project. Here is where I keep my drill and my pegboard. You'll see more of the pegboard later. And my original plan as we get started here was to take these wheels, and boy wouldn't this have been great if this had worked, and just drill holes into the bottom of these 2x4s and stick the wheels on there. And so the first thing I discovered very quickly is that the plates on the wheels, the mounting plates, are too big for the 2x4s. There was no way to put all 4 screws through the mounting plate into the 2x4. And so then I thought, well, gosh, what if I just centered it a little bit off center and just use 2 screws to attach the wheel? And I thought that would probably work if the wheel itself remained underneath the 2x4. But as you can see, as I'm holding it there, the wheel would still be right on the corner of the 2x4. I have no doubt that this would not last, and it was just a bad idea. So I tried it to see how this would work. Also, anytime you're doing a project like this, you should pre-drill all of your screw holes. It just makes the wood not split. It works so much better. Of course, I didn't do that. And as I'm trying to attach this, I can hear that it's trying to split the 2x4. I can hear it cracking. And this is really just a bad idea. So I had to start thinking about a plan B. I think I'm still on plan A here at the moment. I'm trying to attach these wheels and see how this works, but I definitely was not happy with this. I could already see that I was going to need a plan B. And so plan B worked out great in 2 aspects. One, it made it much easier to mount these wheels. You'll see plan B here in just a moment. And number 2, it added more height. Now, one of my complaints at the beginning of the video was that these tables, the workbenches, are not tall enough. I built them, I think they're 32 inches tall. I don't know if that's right. But I used someone else's plans off the internet. And again, they're a decent height for standing, but not for close project work. So what I came up with was an idea to take a 2x4 here and cut it to 21 inches. And 21 inches is the width or the space that the legs are apart on the bottom. And so if I take another 2x4 and I screw it into the bottom of the legs, then it does a few things for me. Number 1, it gives me more mounting space for these caster wheels. That way I could put screws through all 4 holes on the mounting plates. And number 2, it adds the width of a 2x4 to the height. So I get another about 1.5 inches for the width of the 2x4. And then I get 3 inches on the caster plus the extra space of the caster. So it's almost an extra 6 inches of height that I'm adding to these workbenches, which turned out to be absolutely perfect. Now here you can see I'm putting on these earmuffs. What you didn't see is that I had to get the cobwebs out of them because I almost never use those. I'm half deaf from going to too many Metallica and Slayer concerts in my youth. But I did put them on for this video. You should definitely wear ear protection. Protect your ears because you only get 1 pair in life. So now I've cut this 2x4 down to 21 inches, and I used that one as a template to make a line on the existing 2x4 there, and I ended up cutting 4 of these because I was going to need 2 for each of the workbenches. Again, watch your fingers, line everything up, turn the saw on, cut the wood, let go of the trigger, let the saw blade stop before you put your hands anywhere near there. I'm a dummy when it comes to these power tools, and I am afraid of losing fingers and having things fly up and hit me in the face, so I take all the precautions I can. So now you can see with this 2x4 placed on here, I'm going to do another boneheaded move. I learned a lot in this project. And I'm going to try to drill the screw directly into the wood without drilling a pilot hole. And so as I do that, I can immediately hear that the 2x4 below is starting to crack, and that's just not the way to do this project. So I'm using one of those clamps. This is a plastic clamp that you can get at Home Depot or Harbor Freight. I have half a dozen of them, and they are great if you're doing projects by yourself. They can be used as a 3rd or 4th hand and hold things in place. So what I'm doing is ratcheting it down with the little trigger, putting the 2x4 basically exactly where I want it. And now I'm switching out to a drill bit because I've learned my lesson at this point in the project. I'm tired of splitting the end of these 2x4s. And before I tighten everything all the way down, I'll run my fingers along the edge of the 2x4s on the ends and on the sides, make sure everything's lined up exactly how I want it. And once everything's ratcheted down, as you can see, I can go through and drill these holes. Now, one of the biggest pains in a project like this is switching constantly between a drill bit and a screwdriver attachment to drive your screws in. And eventually in this project, you'll see a second drill show up, and that's exactly why I put the drill bit in one drill, and I left the screwdriver attachment in the other drill, and I just swap back and forth. That's a nice convenience if you happen to have two drills laying around, which I do. I have an older corded drill, and then I have this Ryobi cordless drill. I mentioned a lot of brands. I'll tell you what I use. I can tell you that nobody has ever given me a free tool in my life except for my father, and he's not going to give you one. So none of my things are product placements or endorsements. Now that I've got the 2x4 attached there, what I am doing is I'm using my little plastic triangle there to create the exact right amount of space. So by using that straight edge, I've determined where I want to put the caster. That placement gives it just enough space where I can use the brakes, and I can hit my toe with the brakes, but the wheels won't be poking out. I won't be running into those. So again, what I'm doing here is drilling all the holes first, and then I'll be putting screws in second. And by using that little plastic triangle as a spacer, I can go around and do that every single time so that all the wheels are in the exact same space on all four corners. There is a giant, in the foreground there, a giant plastic tub of drywall screws. Those are 2-inch screws. I bought that bucket for about $20 when I owned my first house in the early 90s. And as you can see, I've gone through about a third of them. So I expect that plastic tub of screws to last my entire life. I may have to buy a second one at some point. Here I am using the plastic little angle guide there. I'm just using the width side of it so that I know exactly where to put that wheel, so that they'll all be equidistant from the edge. Then I use the little clamp. Once I get the exactly where I want centered on the 2x4, I use the clamp to hold it in place. And I'm using the drill again to pre-drill those 4 holes. Again, these casters they seem to be pretty good quality. They were 4 for $30, which seemed expensive to me. And again, I already owned another 4 of those casters, so again, it's $60 in wheels, give or take, probably a little bit more than that. I think the first time I bought them, they were $35. So now let's see. Oh, I'm on the other side now of the workbench. So again, I'm using this little ratchet clamp. Again, these things you can buy these for $5 or $10 at any of the. I get them at Harbor Freight because I don't like to spend extra $2 for a name brand. I like to get a generic one. And they come in all shapes or not shapes and sizes, but they do come in all lengths. I have a couple that are 1 foot long. I have a couple that are 2 foot long. And again, they're just really handy if you're doing projects by yourself and you need to hold something in place while you hammer something or drill screws. That seems to be, or if you glue something in place, they're really handy for that. So again, I've got my 2x4 in place. I'm drilling my holes now because I have learned my lesson. I'm drilling with the Ryobi 18-volt cordless power drill. I have a lot of Ryobi tools. Ryobi has never given me anything for free, but Ryobi, if you're out there, I don't even know what I need right now. I've got lots of tools, but again, as with any project, the further it goes on, the better you get, and the more you figure out what you're trying to do. So now that I know what I'm doing, I can drill those 6 holes, switch over to the drill attachment, and then just add all 6 screws in. That little drill attachment, by the way, is magnetic, and it has a little thing that will hold on to the screws there, which makes it really easy to put screws on things, which is its intended purpose. So it makes sense that it would do that. So now that all the screws are in, obviously I'm repeating what I did before. I used my little spacer to get the wheel exactly where I wanted. Pre-drilling all my little holes here. Now you can see that the second drill has entered the ring. This is I don't even know what brand drill that is, but it is a corded drill. And so I just put the drill bit in there. So now that allows me to quickly drill the holes with one drill and then put the screws in with the second drill. Again, it's not a luxury everybody has. You may not have two drills laying around your shop or your garage. This is a workshop that I built in my backyard a couple of years ago, and really enjoyed it. With all four wheels attached, I set the brakes so that it wouldn't go sliding out all over the place, and flipped it back over. You can see, probably it's more difficult to see on the video, but it is now significantly taller. It's about 6 inches taller, and it is just a perfect height. I wish I'd built it this height in the beginning, although I would be sawing off 6 inches off the bottom. But now look at this, I got a rolling workbench, and so this, the first part of the project, proved to be a success. Again, we've got those 2x4s at the bottom and the additional wheels. So now the next step, and you can see kind of the height difference between the two now, is to transfer all the crap that I had on workbench number 2 to workbench number 1. And so once we get workbench number 2 cleared off, we can continue with the exact same process. Again, this is one of those projects that I was making up as I went along. Here I am flipping over workbench number 2. So it goes, all these projects go slow until you come up with a plan, and I like to come up with a plan about halfway through the project. So here we are, flipping over workbench number 2. There was a lot of using brooms and rags to get all these sawdust and cobwebs off everything. When you have a workbench that doesn't move for a couple of years, that's the way it goes. So here we are back to attaching those cross beam 2x4s. Again, they're just attaching to the bottom of the legs that were already there. I've got the quarter drill. I added that extension cord that comes down from the ceiling. That's one of those retractable ones. I got that from Harbor Freight last year, and it's really great for getting power to the middle of the room without constantly tripping over extension cords. So I've got that cord coming down from the ceiling. It retracts when you're not using it. And obviously I attached the 2x4s and the wheels, and now I have 2 rolling workbenches. Now, of course, when I put them side by side, I quickly realized that they're not exactly, they're not mirror images as I thought they were, but they were close enough. Now here I am opening my new packages from Amazon. The first are these hinges that I got this week from Amazon. These were 3 hinges for $10. There are a lot of negative ratings on these because they're supposed to be something brass something, and people complained that they were black. But I thought the black looked pretty cool. I couldn't care less what color the hinges were, and those were exactly what I wanted. The other pieces that I ordered were these deadbolts, and if you're wondering how these deadbolts are going to hold this workbench, then you are ahead of the game, because these did not work at all. This was one of those failures that until you have the pieces in front of you, it's sometimes hard to figure out what's going on. So now what I've done here is I put a 1x4 in between the 2 workbenches because there's that little edge of the hinge that needs to go in that gap. So there's a 1-inch gap between the 2 workbenches. It's not even a full inch, I don't think. I couldn't use another one of my ratchets to hold that, so some duct tape worked pretty well. So now I'm basically just duct taping the hinge, making sure it's lined up even, everything where it wants to go. These hinges and the deadbolts came with screws that were like a 1/4 of an inch long, maybe between a 1/4 and a 1/2 inch long. They were the tiniest screws ever. And as here I'm just pre-drilling tiny little starter holes. I didn't want to drill all the way in because I was afraid that the holes would be too big for these tiny screws. And so when I put the second hinge in, you'll see that I switch over to those drywall 2-inch screws, just so it would have a much, a better grip on the wood. And I think when I go back out there, I'm going to pull these screws out and replace these with those 2-inch drywall screws as well. So here I am on the bottom. It's the exact same thing. I've got that piece of wood just to hold the gap so that the two ends are even. I've got the clamp holding the pieces together. I used a little bit of duct tape, and here I am screwing the screws into the hinge. Now again, on that top one, I used those little tiny screws that came with it, and here you can see I'm using those 2-inch drywall screws, and I think this is going to help that hinge hold on much better. And so I have made the decision. I should pause this video right now and go replace those other screws, but I'm not going to do that. We're powering through the half hour of power hardware show. I just gave the show a new name right there. So here we are putting the finishing screws in there, and now as you can see, we have a working hinge. And if I pull the workbenches away from the wall, I can now fold the two ends around, and we are getting somewhere now. Now the problem that I discovered right there is that the two ends are touching, but on the other side they were 1 inch apart. So I need this to be well, let's get over this tragedy here real quick. Here's the deadbolt. And as you can see, if you put it there and then screw it apart, the deadbolt just comes apart. There's no logical way that the deadbolt would hold those things together. So plan B was, hey, here's what I could do. I'll turn it vertically, and I'll just attach it this way, and I could put it in. But as you see, if I put the screws on both sides, then the two tables are screwed together. So this will not work for this project. So I've set those aside, and instead I picked up these. These are trunk clasps. I got these at Home Depot. To be honest, I would have, if I were ordering them online, I would have got slightly larger ones, but these will work. So again, when I folded the table in, the edge, when it comes together, the corners touched. And so I don't have that nice seam that runs all the way down the middle. So what I decided to do was use that same piece of wood that I used for a spacer and cut off a small block. So you can see I've got the piece of wood here. This is a Ryobi cordless circular saw, which is good because it's portable, and for cutting little things like this. I wouldn't try to cut too much with it. It's good for small jobs. I think it'd be great for if you're doing trim work or, needed a saw somewhere because of the portability. But for heavy duty stuff, I would use my normal circular saw or a miter saw. So now what I've done is I've used my clamp, and as you can see, I've got that little square piece of wood. I drill a couple of holes in here, and then I use some screws to attach that little block to the outside edge of the workbench. And again, let me fold this over here and you'll see what this does. Now when I close the two pieces, you can see that I have that constant gap. Everything lines up perfectly from one side to the other. It's perfect. So now with those stuff, with that there, now I'm using the clamp to hold the two things together again, and I'm going to attach those buckles that you saw. Again, these were, I found these at Home Depot. They had silver, bronze, and black. I bought black ones because it matched the black hinges on the other side. I'm using my trick with the duct tape to hold them in place. And then, as I did with everything else on the project, I'll use a drill to drill some pilot holes, and then I will put the screws to hold these in. So nothing too exciting here. Again, all of these screws are tiny, and especially the ones with those deadbolts would really make me afraid of installing that. I think one good kick would blow all those screws out of screw holes. So I'm not sure how safe it would be to install one of those deadbolts in your house with the tiny screws that it came with. Now the holes on this little buckle were small enough that I had to use those. But looky there, we've got the hinge working, and then when I want to lock it into the position like the workbench, that locks in and everything works great. Now each of these packs that I bought that were $3 came with 2 of these hinges. So I only needed 2 of those packages. Now you can see I've converted it back into the 4x4 workstation. I'm rotating it around, but I've got the exact same problem on the other side. When I open it all the way out, again, the hinge doesn't line up. So I added a second one of those blocks. You can see it right there in the gap, and that gives me that space. So with the other two hinges that I have remaining, I'm going to put those on this side so I can lock it into position either way. If I open it up to where it is a 2 foot by 8 foot workbench, I can lock it into that position with two of the clasps. If I decide to convert it into the 4x4 rolling cart slash project table slash island, whatever you want to call this, and leave it out in the middle of my workshop, then I can also use these other two clasps, and that neither set gets in the way, regardless of which configuration you have it in. So again, here I am attaching a second one down here to the bottom. It just gives it, that way there's not too much pressure on either one of them. And again, it was two for about $3.50, so why not go ahead and splurge and put the second one on there. I'm using the exact same technique that I used before, drilling, putting the screws in, using duct tape to hold it in place while I attach everything and get it everything exactly lined up. Of course, the two pieces are separate, so you kind of have to tape it together as one piece. Now, my favorite part of every video, it's cleanup time. Look at that. Let's put the extension cord away. Let's hang my my little ratchet. This is my pegboard that I love. I put all my tools. Everything has a place. These are all the leftover hinges and bolts and all the stuff. I put them in bags, so I'll be able to find those later. There's where my dirty rags go, next to the clean rags. There's where my corded drill goes. There's where my cordless drill goes. Right above that is where my Ryobi saw hangs right there. I always take the battery out of that when I'm storing it. I don't want anybody to accidentally grab that. There's where my pencil goes, next to the pencil sharpener. Here's my Ryobi charging area where I put all my Ryobi batteries. Put back my duct tape. There's a spot for everything on the pegboard. I absolutely love the pegboard. And here is the finished product. As you can see right here, I've got my 4x4 project area. I can come in, I can set stuff down, I can rotate things around while I'm working on it. I've got easy access to all the brakes, so I can lock it in position. This is just basically folding these little clasps over so that if I were to walk by, it wouldn't catch on my clothing or anything like that. But here I have basically it acts as one unit. All the hinges and the clasps all hold everything together absolutely perfectly. I'm really, really happy with the way this turned out. And when I undo this clasp here and undo the one on the bottom, then you can see this splits back open, and I can turn this into a long workbench where I can put my saw or other things that I need to do and put it over up against the wall. And again, on the other side, as I move this around, you can see that I have the other two clasps, and so as I move it into position up against the wall, I can use those clasps, and that holds everything together. So there you go. This is a pretty simple project. The most expensive thing, again, were those dang wheels. All the other stuff was pretty cheap. And now I have a workbench that converts into a center project island that I could put in the middle of my workshop. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more videos.